Alrighty. Let's get going with the Q&A. All right, I'm very excited to get started. Last week was fun, even though I was still figuring things out. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be that way again today. But I'm a little bit more keyed in, at least, to what's happening. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be, whatever time you may be watching this. If you're not live and you're watching a replay, thanks for joining me. I'm Alison Ellis of realflowerbusiness.com. I teach floral designers how to run the business side of your business with more confidence and more clarity, to make things a little bit easier. And I do these Q&As on Tuesdays to answer your questions and to really just keep things timely. I personally find like social media to be kind of an exhausting venture at this point, but talking to florists is truly one of my favorite things to do. So I'm gonna just be doing that more instead of trying to come up with the perfectly worded social media post every day. And it feels like the right path for me personally. So thank you for being here as I go back to my roots, which is live Q&A. Talking about topics in a live way feels like the most genuine thing I can do, because it's very, very easy to come up with a topic of what I want to talk about to try to sell you into something that I'm offering. But that's, again, like kind of exhausting to do, and it doesn't come from like in my gut all the time. And that's why I haven't been doing as much of that, and why we're here. Because talking about what's on your mind right now is just the best thing for me and hopefully for you. So I'm selfishly doing this because it just feels like a more genuine way to interact with you. So I'm going to get to the questions that I have lined up for today. So first, I got a really great question. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to get started, because that was a question that somebody asked. And then I'm going to address a question that showed up in my Facebook group actually the other day about exclusivity clauses, because it's a really important thing to talk about. So that's what we're going to do. When we are starting our business, there is so much to learn and so much to know. There are a lot of unknowns, and that is just part, right? Just part of it. Part of having a business is you're not going to know everything. So, and I want to throw this out there, because I know some people really hate not knowing everything. It's like kind of counterintuitive for you to not do all the research and have all the things lined up. If you know everything before you start, you have started too late, okay? Just keep that in mind. Sometimes we have to start imperfectly so that we don't get stuck not starting. All right, so I'm throwing that out there. But I want to get to this question that was sent to me in an email from someone who said they're just getting started. She's so sweet. She said, I really admire your business and everything you're doing, but I'm curious, how do I get started? So this person is currently in college. They're a junior in college, and they describe themselves as like being the person, like the friend or the family member that always brings flowers, because flowers are her love language, right? So she knows that she has always been the flower person, and she's thinking now it's time to maybe actually parlay that into a career. So what does she need to do? The question is, how do I get started? So she's away at college, but she'll be moving back to Boston. So I'm mentioning the city in case there's anybody who's a florist in Boston who wants to leave a comment and say, hey, you can come intern for me or come work for me. But so this student is saying, what do I need to do? And she's applied at some flower shops in the area where she's living currently. And she says, it seems like they're all full for the summer. So where does she get started? And then she also had a question about how much profit do I make in my business? So where should this person get started? So if you are, first of all, so great that you're finishing college and then you're going to start your own thing, it's smart to try to start while you're in college and I would say keep looking for a job at a flower shop in your area. Okay? So just because somebody wasn't hiring this summer, don't let that stop you. Summer is not the busiest time for most flower shops. It is if you're like a super wedding person, but also in this area where this person is going to college, it's sort of a hotter climate. And what I have learned is those months where it's hot are the least busy for weddings a lot of times, unless it's only indoors, unless you just do indoor weddings. So these are things to just keep in mind, like different seasons, different areas are going to have different levels of busyness. So that said, if you're serious about having a flower business, go work for somebody, and not just somebody, work for more than one business if you can. Because we don't want to just run our business the way that one person ran their business. We want to take the best things that we have learned from multiple businesses and incorporate them into the way we do things. Okay? So also, perhaps even more important, we learn what things don't work so that we don't do them in our business. And you'll hear so many people, if you're a wedding florist like I am, so many customers will say something similar about planning their wedding, won't they? Well, we've been to a lot of weddings, so we know what we don't want, right? So same thing for your getting started in your business. Work at multiple different flower businesses if you can. So I worked at a flower cart. Then I worked at a flower shop that was like cash and carry. We didn't make deliveries in that, make like custom vase arrangements in that shop until I got there because I was trained to do that. But it was just cash and carry. Then I worked for a really beautiful, like European market kind of inspired flower shop. Then I worked for like a really, really busy, just like get them out the door flower shop. Probably the most profitable flower shop I had ever worked for, by the way. And then I worked for like a mom and pop shop that also had furniture and all kinds of other things that they offered. So I got to see lots of different ways of doing things. And I was able to incorporate all of them into the way that I do my business. I also worked on an organic flower farm. So that was great experience to see like what the flower farmer thinks is like too old to sell. And you're like, I'll take that. That's totally fresh in my book. So it's a great way to just, the way to think about starting your business is you're doing some research by learning on the job. Okay. That said, you shouldn't be working for free anywhere. Nobody should be expecting you to work for no money. And I would also be very skeptical of people who make you pay them to work for them. Those are things that are out there. So those are things I would look out for. But that would be how I would get started. So start where you are. Maybe then when you move back to Boston, maybe you can find someone to freelance for or someone who is looking to actually grow their business and they need somebody who wants to know how to do all the things. Okay? Because what you need to kind of get a grasp on, and the person who asked this question said, I plan to buy your flower math class, and that's great, and I hope you will, and I hope you'll like it. But there's so many different pieces from the flower math, meaning how do we mark up? How do we set a profit goal? How do we decide what our profit margin should be and what our markup should be? Because there isn't just one standard number. We have a range. So how do you pick that, right? Really important to know. But there are these other pieces that are so important to know as well, including floral design, right? We need to know how to take care of the flowers. We need to know how to price them. We need to know how to actually close a sale with a client. So how do we say to them, yes, I am receiving the information of what you want, and I am building trust in this moment and telling you I got this and I'm going to deliver what you want, right? That's a skill. Learning how to decipher what somebody says when they say, I love pink, but I hate purple, and they're holding something lavender in their hand, right? How do we start to sort of pull pieces out of the story or the request to really get to the heart of what it is that they want. So what I mean by that is there's a certain way that we're going to sell funeral flowers that's very different from the way that we're going to sell a wedding or a birthday arrangement or anniversary flowers to someone who's walked into the shop to buy flowers for their wife. All of these things have nuance and certain things that are kind of normal about the way that we do things. And it's something where we need to understand the basics. What does it take to take a funeral arrangement, right? How do you take that order and make sure you're fulfilling it? It's, we had a discussion about this in my Facebook group not too long ago. The general consensus, and I fully agree with this, is as the florist, you don't just blindly deliver to a funeral home or a church. You check. You call the funeral home, you check the papers, you call the church, you find out, is this actually accurate information? Is this where and when this event is happening? Because when someone is placing an order for a funeral, they don't always have everything right, and that's okay. That's okay. Their job is not to have everything right. Hate to break it to you, right? Their job is to try to get through this thing and ask you for help. And your job is to check all that technical stuff, to check the timing. Maybe they have the wrong funeral home. A lot of funeral homes have multiple locations, right? So maybe they just have the wrong location, the wrong time, the wrong day. Whatever it is, this is part of like standard when you're trained in sympathy arrangements and funeral work, that you have this on the back end. You don't involve the customer in that stuff. When we have a wedding, somebody could walk right into the shop and say, hey, I'd like to talk about my wedding. And it might be Valentine's Day week or Mother's Day week, right? Or just simply a day where you are alone in your shop and you don't have time for that. So we need to have a way where we usher clients through that. Yeah, we would love to talk with you about your wedding. When is it? What's your name? Okay, here's how we do this. We set up a time and you come in and we do a razzle dazzle. Maybe you can sell them right there. Who knows? But you need to have some kind of process. Every shop's is going to be different. And you want to figure out what works for you. When it comes to even just plain old, how do you take that anniversary or birthday order? Every shop has a system. What questions do you ask first? Are you asking who it's for and what they would like? Or are you asking them how much they want to spend? Okay? There are methods and sales strategies that go along with all these things. So we need to learn how to take care of the flowers, how to price them, how to sell them, how to have interactions with customers that establish trust. And then we need to build a solid brand and deliver what we promise consistently so that people start to come to us because they know we're the best, because they heard from somebody what a great job you did. And that's the goal. So it's not just as simple as buy an online course, learn how to make a really cool cascade bouquet, and you are now a wedding florist. Although some people do that. There's just a lot more to it. And starting by seeing how real people do things is super important. Okay, so that would be my suggestion. Just keep at it. So I started when I was 16 working at a flower cart. I was like the solo employee, right? It was like one person worked at a time. So I had to know how to do all the things when I was there. And it was very empowering. It was stressful too, but it was really good for me to have full ownership over what happened while I was at work. When I went to college, I had 1 year where I didn't work at a flower shop and it felt very unnatural. I had spotted a flower shop though when I came to like tour colleges here. I went to UVM, and when I was walking on Church Street, there was this gorgeous flower shop, and I was like, that is where I will be working when I get here. So I didn't work my freshman year, but as soon as sophomore year arrived, I was stalking that flower shop, okay? So I went by about 3 times And each time the manager wasn't there. Hi, can I speak with your manager? No, she's not here. Okay, I'll come back. Hi, can I speak with your manager? No, she's not here. So about the third time, maybe it was the fourth time, but sometime around time 3 or 4 when I got there, one of the employees who was the assistant manager at the time said, I am going to let them know that they had better call you because you're just going to keep coming back. And that is what she did. She said, I think you better interview this girl because she's just going to keep coming back. And I interviewed, I got the job that day, and then I worked there for years. So it is not always going to be easy, especially if they're not actively hiring to get a job at a flower shop. But smart bosses hire based on potential more than ability sometimes, because you can have a really well-trained florist who doesn't have a good attitude and does things the way they do them, and that's it. That's not necessarily a more valuable employee than you being a new person coming in who is highly trainable to do things in the way that we want to do them now, not the way that you used to do them. Okay? So those are my thoughts on being persistent, and don't give up just because the shops in town aren't hiring right now. Times where they'll be hiring for sure will be when college students are away. Okay? If they have college students that work at their shop around Thanksgiving and Christmas time, they lose those employees. So it's a great time to maybe pop on in and just be consistent. Just keep showing up. Until they say, hey, listen, this person's going to be annoying. You better interview them. All right. But your other question that you asked was about how much profit do I make each year off of my business? So there's profit, and then there's what you pay yourself. And those are different things usually. Unless you're a sole proprietor, which I was for many years, then your profit is your pay, basically. As my business grew and I became an LLC, and I'm a C Corp, or an S Corp, excuse me, I'm incorporated, which means that I write myself a paycheck and the business has profits, and I can also pay myself additional owner's draws out of that profit. But it's really, this is about how you get taxed and stuff, right? So there's a difference in how we want to set up our business based on tax liability and all that stuff. See, I told you, running a business, there's so much, and you're not going to know all of these things before you start. Okay. So we start and then we figure things out. So as a sole proprietor, I would just pay myself all the profits from the business. And then once I became incorporated, an LLC, then that's when I started writing a paycheck. So I write myself a paycheck, I'll take an owner's draw, and I'll tell you very honestly, because it's so important that people are more transparent about what it is to be a florist. Being a florist is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Okay? There are people who are like, oh, you could do 6 figures and I help people make millions of dollars. That can happen. But we are talking about scale. So when you say how much profit do you make in your business, the real question is how hard are you willing to work and how much are you willing to sell? And that's going to affect how much profit you have. So I know people who are floral designers who pay themselves between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. And then I know people who pay themselves $70,000 a year. I don't really know anybody who pays themselves more than that who has said to me explicitly, oh yes, I pay myself 6 figures. I've had people say they've gotten close, but I don't know how close. I don't know if that's 90,000 or, 80,000 or again, this 70,000-ish range. In order to make that much money though, you need to sell quite a lot. So this is why it's so important, whether you're doing weddings, whether you're doing corporate events, ideally we're diversified. We don't want to just have one income stream if we can avoid that. We want to make sure we have income coming in from different what I call buckets, right? Different buckets of offers that you're selling. That is where you're going to have to figure out, how do I grow different aspects of my buckets so that I can make more money? What's the most profitable bucket and what's the least profitable bucket? And how do I make that work? Just to put a finer point on that, the more you sell, the more help you need in terms of employees, which is going to cut into your bottom line and your profit. So this is where there's like this really fine balance where there's just a huge range of what florists might pay themselves. And it's based on where they live, right? If you're in a bigger city where you have more potential customers, right, you might actually be busier and pay yourself more. It also costs you more to live, right? So everything is relative, and there isn't just like, here's the average salary for a floral designer. Too many florists don't really pay themselves because they're just kind of functioning out of the business. That's why I made Flower Math, to help people understand a little better what they're aiming for so that you can understand, are you hitting that profit goal? Are you overspending, right? So that's what it's always going to come down to. So when it comes to what your profit will be or what your pay will be, it's going to be a combination of how much you sell, how much you spend, and that's all it comes down to, right? And we always got to pay our taxes. So there's that as well. So I know that wasn't the most specific answer, but it's probably one of the most specific answers on the internet these days, because it's very easy to just throw out and say, you can have a 6-figure floral business, but like, show me the numbers, right? And what does that mean? And how many people and how many sales? I know that some people are selling almost like $500,000 in weddings and events in order to pay themselves a reasonable pay. And you need to set for yourself your own goals on what makes sense for you. All right. So I hope that helps. And it was a good question, and one that I think needed a little bit more than just a little email reply. So anyway, thanks for your question, and really good luck as you continue on your floral adventure. All right, let's get to my next question here on the exclusivity clause. This is a big one. It was a great question in my group. So the question was basically, what do I do? I went to a wedding that I, was contracted for. I delivered everything that I was contracted for, but there was a wedding planner there who had other flowers, who had unsanctioned flowers, non-kosher flowers. They did not come from the florist. They were bud vases. They were, some other, I think they were described as clumps of flowers. And what do you do? She said, should I have an exclusivity clause? So it's a really important topic for so many reasons. One is because the word exclusivity clause, when it comes to being a florist, is so new. This is not a standard thing, okay? It is not standard that florists have in their contract that thou shalt not have any other outside flowers at this event of any kind. And if you do, I will remove them. You can have this clause, okay? I do not, and I will tell you why. Because I've been a florist for 30 years, and this is not the norm. So one of the biggest weddings that I did many years ago, at the time it was such a huge, whoa, I can't believe I booked this wedding. I would never have gotten that wedding if I had an exclusivity clause, because this family, a very wealthy family, was so excited about one of their family members, it was an aunt, doing some decor at the wedding. The aunt does the decor for every event, everything. And so she will be doing some decor for this wedding. Now, do you think I liked that? This was probably, 12, 13 years ago. This was a while ago. Do you think I liked that? No, my friends. I did not, as a matter of fact, like the sound of this. It was also like a little intimidating. Like, oh, what if this aunt is like really amazing? Like, am I up to snuff? Spoiler alert, she was not amazing, okay? But if I had an exclusivity clause that said, oh no, or if I had a conversation with them when they said, because here's the deal, we can put something in our contract. However, if you have been following me for a minute, you've probably heard me say, I don't assume my clients actually read my contract. Should they? Yes. Do most of them? Probably. But just because it's in the contract doesn't mean that they like absorbed it in their brain and they're fully aware of it. They've also signed a lot of contracts that say a lot of different things. So unless you're saying to your customer, please be sure to review our contract periodically, okay? You can't assume that just because it's in your contract, your customer is like fully aware of it. So there's that. If we are trying to avoid outside flowers being at the event, and I'm not saying this in a mocking way, trust me, I would love for this to just be the norm, that once you are the florist, there will be no other flowers. That would be great. Let's just wave a magic wand to make it so. However, this is a conversation. This is a conversation. If you have a bad experience, sometimes it becomes a clause in your contract, yes. But not everything is a clause in your contract. Some things are a conversation. So if you don't want to have any outside flowers at the event, have a conversation. So when this customer said to me 12 or 13 years ago, oh, our aunt is going to do like all this decorating, I had a choice to say, well, can I have approval on that decorating? What do you think they would have said? Nope. I could have said, well, I'm really not comfortable with someone else doing decor when I'm the florist because it really can compromise the integrity of the overall look. Do you think they cared about that? No, because it was more important to them that they include the aunt than that they work with me. Okay, so know your place in this whole routine, okay? Where do you fit into this equation? So if you're really feeling like, hey, I got burned this weekend, I can't even show pictures of this thing, it doesn't look like what I am proud to deliver, my heart goes out to you. That's what happened to me at this event. There were bows on every single tent pole, and the way I set up the head table was completely changed when I got there with the, flowers from the church. I brought the flowers from the church to the reception, and I could see that what I had set up was completely changed. What am I supposed to do? Go over and make a scene? Heck no. Do I care? Did it look better? I didn't think it looked better. I did not think it looked better. But it's not about me, right? I had pictures of what I had done. Always take pictures of your work and what you had done, because if they didn't like the head table, I could say, oh, well, that's not how I said it. Here's how I did it. But that's just not my place. It's not my place to say, listen, this is going to make me look bad if you set up that head table like that. And hey, this is going to make me look bad if you have fake bows on every single tent pole out here for the cocktail hour. That doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve the client. And so this is where if you want to have an exclusivity clause and then you're going to get to the venue and there's going to be the bud vases or the clumps of flowers or whatever they are, what do you do? Right? What do you do? Are you causing a scene? Are you causing a fight? Are you removing them and saying this is against my contract? Because like the poster in my group said when she asked the question, as soon as I leave, the planner can just put it back. And yeah, bingo, exactly. Tell her what she's won. The reality award, that's right. The minute that you leave, they can change it. So we have to pick our battles. And when we have a bad experience, sometimes it becomes a clause in our contract. But I would really caution you against throwing a clause into your contract that you wouldn't be willing to enforce. If you're not willing to make a scene, and go, this is against my contract. Maybe it doesn't belong in there. Maybe it's a conversation. Do you plan to have any other flowers? Will there be any other flowers? Or if there are any other flowers that are on site, we will move them. You could just make it as a blanket statement. There's a venue that I work at very occasionally, and they have little bud vases out, and they never match what I am doing. There's only so much I can do to get rid of these bud vases without literally saying, these are unacceptable, get them out of my face, right? And again, that's not my job. My job is to deliver what I delivered and then move these things as best I can so that they are not interfering with my design work. But yeah, that's just kind of part of it sometimes. I've also had a situation where, like, what if you have a grandparent or a family member who can't make it, and they send flowers, a thoughtful gift, and now they would like to have them for the ceremony up on the altar, or they want to have them at the cocktail hour on the bar, and they don't match. Oh my goodness, they do not match what you made. What are you going to do? Say, no, I'm sorry. You cannot have the flowers that grandpa sent on the bar because it reflects badly on me. Good luck with that. Good luck. Good luck. Good night and good luck. Because that is not how we want to run our business. It's not about us at that moment. It's not about us. It's about them. So I would encourage you to think about having a conversation around it before just adding a clause. If you are going to add this clause to your contract, ask your lawyer what they think about it. Do they think this is a reasonable thing? Because if the mother of let's just say it's a wedding, and the mother of the groom got flowers for the rehearsal dinner, and she would like to have them somewhere at the reception, are you there to say no? Maybe your client wants you to say no. And this is where it's more of a conversation than just a clause in the contract. So I could kind of go on and on about this because it is something that feels very right and righteous and like it makes sense to do, but it's really not the standard in our industry for many, many years. You know, all these years of doing weddings, the standard is not, you know what, you got to sign this contract that says you're not going to bring in any outside flowers whatsoever. All right, so pick our battles. And if you do need help with contract language, I have a contract for florists. It's on my website at realflowerbusiness.com. I share an example of how you could include an exclusivity clause in your contract, but I'm very transparent that I do not include that in my contract. In 24 seasons, this is my 25th season in business, the amount of times that I've had a problem because people have brought in outside decor is so minimal that it doesn't deserve to be a clause. If you're worried about it, have a conversation, and just always remember your intention is what's important when we're putting that clause in there. Why does it exist? This clause exists to protect what your event looks like. Is that why it exists, or does it exist so that your social media photos will look like you? And just be honest about that. Just be honest. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but you know, you need to be clear on why does this need to exist at all? Because if a client asks you, well, why is that? Are you going to just say, oh, because there were these really ugly bud vases at a wedding once, and they'll go, oh yeah, I don't want that. You might be able to easily get them on your side with just one conversation. All right. So that's it. That's it for my Q&A today. Thank you for trusting me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for submitting questions to me, because it really, I don't take them lightly. Even if it's just a one-off question in my Facebook group, I really appreciate the trust that you put when you say, hey, everybody, what do you recommend here? Or what should I do? Right? It's really not that easy. So I appreciate you showing up and doing that. Oh, hey, Stephanie. Stephanie says, that is such a great point about exclusivity clause and it being something you're willing and able to execute. The main point, have the conversation. Thank you. Yes. Part of this for me comes from something that might be erroneous information. So I'm saying that off the top. I am not a lawyer, right? I am a floral designer. But this idea that what if there's something in your contract that's not valid, like invalidating the entire contract? Again, this might be erroneous. That might not be a thing, okay? But this is like something that got implanted in my brain a very long time ago. And so I'm very, very careful about making sure I don't have illegal things in my contract that could maybe invalidate the whole thing. Also, if I mean these clauses, I don't want to throw something in there that I don't really mean, right? So I don't really mean that if you want to reuse your flowers from the rehearsal dinner, I don't love it. I might move them someplace a little to the background, but I'm not going to have an argument or approach you about it. I'm certainly not approaching my customer about it. I want them to have a stellar experience with me from start to finish, and I'm not looking to start a fight on the wedding day. So yeah, if you're not going to execute it, don't put it in the contract. Have a conversation about it. Thanks for your comments, Stephanie. It's great to know somebody's out there watching. All right. Keep doing beautiful work. I'll see you here next week for another Q&A. So fun. And once again, we'll see if I can figure out how to end this stream. All right. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Bye.